I was hired to photograph a billionaire wedding. 2 days before the ceremony, the groom's ex-fiancée pulled me aside and said, "I'll pay you $15,000 if you pretend to be in love with me." The late afternoon sun over Napa Valley did not just shine, it dripped. It coated the rolling hills of the Ashford estate in a heavy, golden glaze that smelled distinctly of crushed grapes, heritage roses, and old money. For Riley Santos, it mostly smelled like sweat and panic. She adjusted the strap of her Canon 5D Mark IV, wincing as the nylon dug into the sunburn on her shoulder. Her boots, scuffed combat style that had seen better days, crunched against the pristine white gravel of the aisle. She checked the light meter again. Perfect. Of course it was perfect. Victoria Ashford, or Tori, as she demanded to be called with a smile that never quite reached her eyes, did not allow for imperfections. Riley wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, checking her phone. 3 missed calls from the bank, and 1 text message. Final notice regarding the property at 42 Elm Street. Payment of $4,200 due by Friday at 5 p.m., or foreclosure proceedings will initiate. Riley swallowed hard, the taste of bile rising in her throat. 42 Elm, her grandmother's studio. The place that smelled like developing chemicals and cinnamon tea, the only thing in the world she had left. Friday, that was in 3 days. She shoved the phone into her back pocket, forcing herself to breathe. She had this job. The Ashfordshire wedding was the event of the season. Tech royalty marrying old money. If she nailed this, if she got the shots that ended up in Vogue or Town and Country, maybe she could leverage it. Maybe she could ask for an advance. "Excuse me," a voice chimed, sharp and sugary. "You're blocking the sight line for the florals." Riley spun around. Tori Ashford stood there, looking like a human champagne flute, tall, slender, and sparkling in a white silk rehearsal jumpsuit that probably cost more than Riley's car. Her hair was a perfect cascade of blonde waves, not a single strand daring to succumb to the humidity. "Miss Ashford," Riley said, stepping off the white runner. "Just checking the golden hour lighting for tomorrow. The ceremony backdrop looks incredible." Tori didn't look at the backdrop. She looked Riley up and down, her gaze lingering on the faded black t-shirt and the utility belt around Riley's waist. "Great," Tori said, dismissing her. "Just try to be invisible tomorrow, okay? Derek's family is very traditional. We want the photos to look effortless, not labored." "Understood," Riley said, keeping her voice neutral. "I'm a ghost." "Good." Tori smiled, then immediately turned her back, waving a manicured hand. "Derek, honey, the arch is off-center." Riley exhaled, lifting her camera to snap a test shot of the bride. Through the lens, she saw the sharpness of Tori's profile. Beautiful, sharp, dangerous. Then the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't a sound. It was a temperature drop. The chatter of the bridesmaids, the shouted instructions of the wedding planner, the ambient noise of the vineyard, it all seemed to dampen. A black SUV rolled up the long driveway, dust kicking up behind its polished tires. It came to a stop near the entrance of the outdoor chapel. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out. Riley instinctively brought her camera up. It was a reflex. When you see something that commands the frame, you shoot it. He was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him with the kind of architectural precision you only get from Italian tailors. He wore no tie, the top button of his crisp white shirt undone, exposing a hint of tanned skin. But it was his face that caught the sensor. High cheekbones that looked like they could cut glass. Dark hair swept back, slightly messy as if he had run his hands through it a dozen times in frustration, and eyes that were hidden behind dark aviators, though the tension in his jaw told the whole story. Click, click, click. Riley lowered the camera, checking the small screen. The image was striking. The man looked like he was walking to a funeral, not a wedding. "Marcus," Ray's voice rang out, overly loud, performing for an audience of 50 guests. The man Marcus stopped. He took off his sunglasses. His eyes were dark, intense, and completely devoid of warmth. Riley recognized him then. Marcus Cole, the tech genius, the founder of Nebula, the man who had been engaged to Tori Ashford 3 years ago, right before his company almost went under. Rumor had it she dumped him the day his stock plummeted and was dating his business partner, Derek Chen, before the moving trucks had even cleared Marcus's penthouse. Now Marcus was a billionaire, and he was here to watch his ex-fiancée marry his ex-best friend. Ouch. Riley watched from behind a trellis of climbing hydrangeas. Victoria, Marcus said. His voice was deep, smooth, and dry as the gravel beneath his shoes. Tori glided over to him, grabbing his hands. I am so glad you came. I told Derek, Marcus is the bigger person. He wouldn't miss this. It was a power move, a public declaration of dominance. Look, everyone, I broke him and he still showed up. I wouldn't miss Derek's big day, Marcus said, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on the groom who was currently hiding behind a floral arrangement. We have a lot of history. We do, Tori beamed, linking her arm through his. Come, I want you to meet everyone. Show them you're doing well. She dragged him toward the gathered guests. Marcus moved stiffly like a man walking through a minefield. Riley brought her camera up again. She zoomed in. Through the telephoto lens, she saw the truth. The way his knuckles were white where he gripped his sunglasses. The way a muscle feathered in his jaw. The utter hollow devastation masked by a $5,000 suit. Click. She got the shot. The real one. The one that said everything about what it cost to be Marcus Cole in this moment. Hey, Riley jumped, nearly dropping her lens cap. A young woman stood next to her. She looked like a softer, warmer version of Marcus. Same dark eyes, but these were filled with worry, not ice. You're the photographer, right? The woman asked. Riley, she said, extending a hand. And you are Jamie, Marcus's sister. She looked toward the group where Tori was currently parading Marcus around like a show pony. And currently, the designated panic attack preventer. Riley smiled sympathetically. He looks like he's holding it together. He's vibrating, Jamie whispered. Do you see his left hand? He only clenches his fist like that when he wants to punch something or buy a company just to dismantle it. Riley looked. Jamie was right. Why did he come? Riley asked. It was unprofessional, but she couldn't help it. Because if he didn't, the headlines would say he was bitter, Jamie sighed. And for Marcus, being seen as weak is worse than being miserable, plus his investors are watching. If he looks unstable, Nebula's stock takes a hit. He has to look like the unbothered, thriving billionaire bachelor. High stakes for a wedding weekend, Riley muttered. You have no idea. Jamie checked her watch. I need to go rescue him before he says something honest. Nice meeting you, Riley. Jamie darted off into the fray. Riley stayed on the periphery working. She photographed the flower girls, the expensive appetizers, the nervous groom. But her lens kept drifting back to Marcus. He was fascinating. Every interaction he had was a performance. He smiled at the right times, laughed at the bad jokes, nodded when the older relatives patted his shoulder. But the moment the conversation ended, the mask slipped for a fraction of a second. And every time it slipped, Riley clicked the shutter. 2 hours later, the sun had dipped below the hills, turning the sky a bruised purple. The rehearsal dinner was set to start in an hour, but for now, there was a lull. Riley sat on a stone bench near the equipment van, hidden by a row of cypress trees. She had her laptop open, tethered to her phone's hotspot, trying to upload the day's previews. The connection was terrible. Come on, she hissed, tapping the enter key aggressively. Don't die on me now. Her phone buzzed. It wasn't the upload. It was the bank again. She answered, her voice low and frantic. Hello. Yes, this is Riley Santos. I know, I got the text. She pinched the bridge of her nose, squeezing her eyes shut. Look, I am on a job right now, a big one. The check clears on Monday. Can't you just give me until Monday? It's my grandmother's legacy. I know the market is hot. I know developers want the land, but please. Silence on the other end. Then a bureaucratic non-answer. Fine, Riley snapped, tears stinging her eyes. Friday, 5 p.m. I'll find the money. I don't know how, but I will. She hung up and dropped the phone onto the bench, burying her face in her hands. $4,200. It wasn't millions. To the people at this wedding, it was a handbag. It was a bottle of wine. To her, it was the difference between keeping her history and losing everything. Rough day at the office. The voice was deep, baritone, and startlingly close. Riley's head snapped up. Marcus Cole was standing 10 feet away, leaning against the trunk of an ancient oak tree. He had shed his jacket, his white shirt glowing in the twilight. He held a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in one hand. He had been watching her. Riley quickly wiped her cheeks, straightening her spine. "Mr. Cole, I didn't see you there." "I know," he said, taking a sip of his drink. "You were too busy negotiating for your life." Riley bristled. "I was handling personal business, which is private." "Nothing is private in a place like this," Marcus said, pushing off the tree and walking toward her. He moved with a predatory grace, silent and sure. "Sound carries over the vines." He stopped in front of her. Up close, he was overwhelming. He smelled of sandalwood, expensive scotch, and the crisp, cold air of an air-conditioned luxury car. "You're the photographer," he stated, "not a question." "Riley," she corrected. "And yes, I was hired to document the joyous union." She couldn't keep the sarcasm out of her voice. Marcus let out a short, humorless laugh. "Joyous, is that what we're calling it? That's what the check says." Marcus looked down at her laptop screen. The image displayed was one she had taken earlier, the one of him staring at the altar. He froze. Riley moved to close the laptop, but his hand shot out, catching the lid. His fingers were long, manicured, and strong. "Wait," he commanded. He stared at the photo, at his own exposed vulnerability. "You have a good eye," he said quietly. "Too good." "I capture what's there," Riley said defensively. "I can delete it if you want." "No," Marcus said, straightening up. He looked at her then, really looked at her. He scanned her messy bun, the smudge of ink on her cheek, the defiant tilt of her chin, the worn-out boots. "You need $4,200 by Friday," he said. Riley stood up, her face flushing hot. "That is none of your business. And I need," Marcus continued, ignoring her outrage, "to stop looking like the pathetic, heartbroken ex-fiancé who showed up alone to the wedding of the century." Riley blinked. "What?" Marcus set his drink down on the stone bench. He crossed his arms over his chest. The air between them crackled with sudden transactional energy. "Victoria is winning," Marcus said coldly. "She has the narrative. She has the groom. She has the pity of every person here. They look at me and they see a man who hasn't moved on, a man who buried himself in work because he couldn't find anyone else." "Maybe you should have brought a date then," Riley retorted. "I did," Marcus said. "She canceled this morning. Something about a modeling contract in Milan, or maybe she just didn't want to walk into the lion's den." He took a step closer to Riley. She held her ground, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. "I need a buffer," Marcus said. "I need someone on my arm, someone to smile at me, to laugh at my jokes, to look at me like I am the center of her universe. I need to show Victoria, Derek, and the board of directors that I am perfectly fine." Riley laughed. It was a sharp, incredulous sound. "And you want me to be your date?" "I want to hire you," Marcus corrected, "for a role. I'm the photographer, Mr. Cole. I'm practically the help. Tori would eat me alive." "Exactly," Marcus said, his eyes gleaming with a sudden dark idea. "Victoria chose you because she thinks you're invisible. She thinks you're nobody. Walking in with you, it's unexpected, it's chaotic. It proves I don't care about their social hierarchy." "Wow," Riley deadpanned. "You sure know how to make a girl feel special. Be my chaos agent because my ex thinks I'm trash." "I'm offering you a business transaction," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. "You pretend to be my girlfriend for the weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning, you stay in my villa, you eat the food, you drink the wine, and whenever we are in public, you act like you are madly in love with me." Riley stared at him. "You're insane." "I'm desperate," he countered. And so are you. He reached into his inner suit pocket and pulled out a checkbook. A sleek black leather checkbook. He produced a fountain pen. $15,000, he said. Riley's breath hitched. What? 15,000, Marcus repeated, scribbling on the check. That covers your debt to the bank, it saves your studio, and it gives you a nice cushion for whatever lenses or equipment you need. He ripped the check out with a satisfying tear. He held it up between two fingers. $15,000. It was a lifeline, it was freedom. It was her grandmother's legacy, safe and sound. All she had to do was sell her pride for 3 days. Riley looked at the check, then she looked at Marcus. You want to pay me to be arm candy at your ex's wedding? That's not pathetic at all. Marcus didn't flinch. I'm paying you to do a job. You're already here to document a lie, their perfect love story. What's one more performance? He stepped closer, invading her personal space. She could feel the heat radiating off him. $15,000, Riley. Take it. Save your studio or go back to your hotel room and panic about Friday. He held the check out further. Riley looked at his hand. It was steady. She thought about the bank. She thought about the leak in the studio roof. She thought about Tori Ashford telling her to be invisible. She snatched the check from his fingers. Fine, she said, her voice shaking slightly. But if you think I'm going to just sit there and smile like a doll, you hired the wrong girl. Marcus's lip curled up. It wasn't a smile, not really. It was something sharper. Good, he said. I hate dolls. He checked his watch. The welcome reception starts in 45 minutes. Go to the boutique in town. My sister is meeting you there. Buy something that doesn't look like. He gestured vaguely at her combat boots. I like these boots, Riley snapped. They don't go with my suit, Marcus turned, picking up his drink. Don't be late. Sweetheart, we have a show to put on. He walked away back toward the main house, leaving Riley standing in the gathering dark with a check for $15,000 burning a hole in her hand. She looked down at the paper. The signature was bold, aggressive. Marcus Cole. I am going to regret this, she whispered to the empty vineyard. But she put the check in her pocket, packed up her laptop, and started walking toward her car. The game was on. The hotel room Riley had booked for herself was, generously speaking, a closet with a window. It was at a roadside motel 10 miles from the Ashford estate. The carpet smelled of lemon cleaner and stale cigarettes, and the neon sign outside buzzed with a rhythmic, headache-inducing click. Riley paced the 3 feet of available floor space between the bed and the wall. He is insane, she said into her phone, which was pressed to her ear. Mia, he is actually certifiable. He's a billionaire. Mia's voice crackled through the speaker. Eccentricity is allowed, and did the check clear? Riley looked at the banking app on her phone screen. She had deposited it via mobile capture 10 minutes ago, pending $15,000. It's pending, Riley said, but that's not the point. The point is he wants me to lie to everyone, to Tori, to his business partners. He wants me to be his buffer. Riley, Mia said, her voice turning serious. Listen to me. You called me crying yesterday because you were going to lose Nana's studio. You were going to have to sell her cameras. You were going to be working at a coffee shop by next month. Riley stopped pacing. She looked at her reflection in the warped motel mirror. She looked tired. She looked scared. I know, she whispered. So, Mia continued, you are already at the wedding. You are already invisible to these people. They don't see Riley Santos, human being. They see photographer, service staff. Marcus Cole is just the only one honest enough to pay you for your time. Take the money, make them see you, and save the studio. Riley took a deep breath. She closed her eyes. She imagined the studio, the darkroom, the wall of photos her grandmother had taken over 50 years. Okay, Riley said. Okay, I'm doing it. Good girl, Mia said. Now, do you have a dress? He sent me to a boutique, Riley said, looking at the garment bag hanging on the shower rod. His sister met me there. She helped. Is it hot? It's expensive, Riley evaded. Wear it, own it, call me later with details, and Riley, don't fall for him, he sounds like a walking red flag factory. He's a robot in a suit, Mia. I'm safe. Riley hung up. She looked at the time. 7 p.m. The welcome cocktails had already started. She grabbed her phone and typed a text to a number she had saved simply as the client. I'm in, but I have conditions. 3 dots appeared instantly. Meet me at the north gate. 10 minutes. The north gate of the vineyard was a wrought iron masterpiece that separated the guest villas from the working vines. It was shadowed, quiet, and far away from the prying eyes of the reception happening on the main lawn. Riley leaned against the iron bars, her arms crossed. The wind had picked up, and she shivered. She wasn't wearing the dress yet. She was still in her work clothes. She wanted to set the ground rules before she put on the costume. Gravel crunched. Marcus appeared out of the shadows. He had changed. He was wearing a navy suit now, darker, sleeker. He looked like the night sky, cold and distant. You're late, he said. I'm on time. Riley checked her phone. 7:14 p.m. You said 10 minutes. I prefer early. Marcus stopped a few feet from her. You said conditions. Yes. Riley pushed off the gate. She needed to feel tall. She needed to feel like she had some power here. One, she held up a finger. Half the money is mine, no matter what happens. Even if I trip and spill wine on Tori, even if you decide midway through that I'm annoying, the studio needs that cash, non-refundable. Marcus nodded once. Agreed. The check is already deposited. I won't cancel it. 2, she held up a second finger. You don't treat me like an employee when we are in public. No ordering me around. No snapping your fingers. No fetch me a drink, darling. If I am your girlfriend, I am your equal. We are partners. Marcus tilted his head, studying her. Fair. And 3, Riley stepped closer, looking him dead in the eye. This was the hard one. This was the one that scared her. If you want people to believe you're into me, you have to actually act like I exist. Marcus frowned. I don't understand. I watched you today, Riley said. With everyone, you look through people, you talk to them, but you're thinking about your stock price or your exit strategy. You don't connect. She took a breath. If I'm the girl who made you get over Tori Ashford, then I must be pretty special, right? So you have to look at me like I'm special. You have to make eye contact. You have to listen when I speak. You have to touch me like you want to, not like you're holding a prop. Marcus was silent. He looked at her face, searching for something. I'm not an actor, Riley, he said, his voice low. I don't know how to fake that. Then don't fake it, Riley shrugged. Just find something you tolerate about me and focus on that. Maybe you like my efficiency or my punctuality. Marcus looked down at her lips, then up to her eyes. I tolerate your stubbornness, he murmured. Riley felt a jolt go down her spine. Okay, that works. Focus on the stubbornness. Is that all? Marcus asked. One more thing, Riley said. I am still the photographer. I have a contract with Tori. I have to take pictures. You have to be okay with me working while we are dating. Multitasking, Marcus smirked. I respect that. Good. Riley extended her hand. Do we have a deal, Mr. Cole? Marcus looked at her hand. His was warm, dry, and large when he engulfed hers. It's Marcus, he said. If you're my girlfriend, you call me Marcus. Marcus, she tested the name. It felt heavy on her tongue. Go get changed, Riley, he said, releasing her hand. The sharks are circling. I need my partner. 40 minutes later, Riley stood in front of the full-length mirror in the guest villa Marcus had assigned to her. It was nicer than her apartment. It was nicer than any place she had ever lived. The dress hung on her body like liquid moonlight. It wasn't what Marcus had likely expected. She hadn't gone for the flashy sequins or the structured power suits that Tori favored. With Jamie's help, she had found a slip dress in a deep emerald green silk. It was simple, almost deceptively so. It skimmed her curves without clinging, dipping low in the back. It was elegant, but it had an edge. It was vintage. It had history. She had let her hair down, her natural curls tumbled around her shoulders, wild and soft. She applied a dark berry lip stain, swapping her combat boots for a pair of strappy gold heels Jamie had insisted on buying. She didn't look like a rich girl. She looked like an artist. She looked like herself, just amplified. There was a knock on the door. "Ready?" Marcus's voice. Riley took a deep breath. She grabbed her small clutch, which held her phone and a spare memory card. She opened the door. Marcus was standing in the hallway checking his phone. He looked up and stopped. His hand lowered slowly to his side. The phone screen went dark. He didn't say anything. He just looked. He looked at the curls. He looked at the emerald silk. He looked at the gold shoes, and then he looked at her eyes. "Well," Riley asked, feeling suddenly shy. "Do I pass inspection, or is it not corporate enough?" Marcus blinked as if waking up from a trance. He cleared his throat. "You look." He seemed to struggle for the word. "You look dangerous." Riley grinned. "Dangerous is good, right? Keeps them on their toes." "It definitely will," Marcus murmured. He held out his arm. "Shall we? The lion's den awaits." Riley looked at his arm, then she looked at his face. He was doing it. He was looking at her. She looped her arm through his. He pulled her slightly closer than necessary. His side was solid, warm rock. "Let's go ruin a wedding," Riley whispered. Marcus actually smiled. A real one. Sharp, terrified, and exhilarating. "Lead the way." The entrance to the Ashfordshire welcome reception was less like a party and more like a tactical gauntlet lined with hydrangeas and fairy lights. Riley tightened her grip on her clutch, her knuckles pressing white against the vintage leather. Beside her, Marcus Cole was a solid wall of tension. He wasn't shaking, but he was radiating a frequency of unease that only dogs and sensitive electronic equipment could pick up. "Relax," Riley whispered out of the side of her mouth, keeping a pleasant, plastic smile plastered on her face. "You look like you're walking to the electric chair. Try to look like you're walking into a party with a hot date." Marcus glanced down at her. His eyes darkened as they swept over the emerald silk dress. "I am walking into a party with a hot date," he murmured. "That's the problem. It's uncharted territory." Riley stumbled slightly, just a millimeter catch of her heel on the cobblestone, but Marcus's arm tightened instantly, steadying her. "Smooth," she muttered. "Don't fall, Riley. It ruins the mystique." They stepped through the archway and onto the main lawn. The conversation didn't stop, but it shifted. The ambient hum of 100 wealthy people drinking Pinot Noir changed pitch. Heads turned. Eyes narrowed. The collective intake of breath was audible. Marcus Cole had arrived, and he wasn't alone. Riley felt the weight of the stairs. It was physical, like walking through a spider web. She lifted her chin. Showtime. "Marcus." The groom, Derek Chen, approached them. He held a glass of whiskey and wore a smile that looked like it had been bought off a shelf. He was handsome in a soft, non-threatening way, the exact opposite of Marcus's sharp edges. "You made it," Derek said, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. The gesture was too hard, too friendly. And, wow, Derek turned his gaze to Riley. It was an appreciative, slightly sleazy look that made Riley want to shower. "I don't think we've met," Derek said. "Riley," Marcus said, his voice flat. "This is Riley." He didn't offer a last name. He didn't offer an explanation. It was a power move, Riley realized. She doesn't need an introduction. She just is. "Nice to meet you, Riley." Derek grinned. Marcus usually goes for, well, let's just say corporate lawyers is his usual demographic. "You seem fun." "I'm a riot," Riley deadpanned. She extended a hand. "Congratulations on the wedding, Derek. The venue is stunning. The lighting design on the pergola inspired." Derek blinked. "Oh, thanks. That was all Tory. I just write the checks." Speaking of, Marcus cut in, stepping slightly in front of Riley, shielding her. "We need drinks." He steered her away before Derek could reply. "He's a charmer," Riley whispered as they navigated toward the bar. "He's a shark with no teeth," Marcus muttered. "He just gums you to death." They reached the bar. Marcus ordered a scotch, neat. Riley asked for sparkling water with lime. "Water?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I'm paying $15,000. You can have the champagne." "I'm working tomorrow," Riley reminded him. "And I need my wits about me. Tori Ashford is currently staring at the back of my head like she wants to set my hair on fire." "Let her stare." Marcus took a sip of his drink. He turned, leaning back against the bar, effectively boxing Riley in. It was an intimate pose. To the room, it looked like he was focused entirely on her. "Do you know anyone here?" Riley asked, scanning the crowd. "Everyone," Marcus said disdainfully. "That's the CEO of Horizon over there. The woman in the red dress is a venture capitalist who passed on my first round of funding. She's been trying to get a meeting with me for 6 months." "Wave at her," Riley suggested. "No, do it. Wave, smile, look like you're having the time of your life." Marcus sighed, the sound rumbling in his chest. He lifted his glass slightly in the woman's direction and gave a tight, barely there smile. The woman nearly dropped her canapé. "See." Riley grinned. Chaos. For the next hour, they circulated. Riley was surprised to find that the girlfriend role wasn't actually that hard. It was just customer service with better wardrobe. She charmed the grandmother of the groom by complimenting her vintage brooch. She discussed the vintage of the wine with the caterer, slipping into industry speak that made the sommelier nod in respect. She laughed at Marcus's dry, acerbic comments, touching his arm lightly, smoothing his lapel. And Marcus was trying. He held her hand. He didn't let go. His thumb traced idle circles on her skin, a nervous tick that felt surprisingly grounding. When he spoke to people, he didn't physically turn away from her. He kept her in his orbit. "I'm going to the ladies' room," Riley whispered after an hour of standing in heels. "My feet are staging a coup." "Hurry back," Marcus said. "I'm about to be cornered by a crypto bro." Riley slipped away, navigating the crowd toward the main house. The bathroom was empty. It was a cavernous space with marble floors and actual cloth towels. Riley leaned against the sink, letting out a long breath. Her face hurt from smiling. The door opened behind her. Riley looked in the mirror. Tori Ashford walked in. The bride wasn't smiling. She looked perfect, pristine, and utterly cold. "So," Tori said, moving to the sink next to Riley. She pulled out a lipstick, applying it with surgical precision. "Riley, that's an interesting name." "It's a family name," Riley lied smoothly. "And how did you two meet?" "Marcus is so private, he never mentioned seeing anyone." "We met at a gallery opening," Riley said. This was the lie she and Marcus had agreed on in the car. Vague, plausible. "He was looking at a piece I liked. We started arguing about the composition." "Marcus hates art," Tori said, snapping the lipstick shut. She turned to face Riley. "He thinks it's an inefficient use of capital." Riley turned too, leaning her hip against the marble vanity. "Maybe he just never liked the art you showed him," Riley said softly. Tori's eyes narrowed. "Listen, sweetie, I don't know who you are. Maybe you're some consultant he hired. Maybe you're a fling, but Marcus is fragile right now. He's here to prove a point. Don't think for a second that this is real." "It feels pretty real to me," Riley said. "He's very attentive. He's performing." Tori stepped closer. "He's trying to make me jealous, and it's frankly a little embarrassing for both of you." "If you're so worried about him making you jealous," Riley said, her voice dropping, "why are you in here interrogating his date instead of enjoying your wedding weekend?" Tori flinched, a crack in the porcelain armor. "Just stay out of the photos," Tori hissed. "I don't want to have to crop you out later," spun on her heel and marched out. Riley let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Okay," she whispered to her reflection. "Round one to the hired help." She walked back outside. The atmosphere had changed. The music had stopped. Derek was standing on a small stage with a microphone. Tori was next to him, beaming. "Everyone," Derek announced, his voice booming over the speakers. "Before we get to the dancing, Tori thought it would be fun to play a little game. We want to celebrate love in all its forms tonight." Riley felt a cold not form in her stomach. She found Marcus in the crowd. He looked alert, like a soldier hearing a twig snap in enemy territory. "We're going to pass the mic around," Tori chirped. "And we want couples to come up and tell us the story of the exact moment they knew they were in love. Short, sweet, and true." The crowd applauded politely, and Tori's eyes scanned the crowd, locking onto Marcus with laser precision. I think we should start with our special guest. Marcus, bring Riley up here. We are all dying to know how you two met. The spotlight swung. It hit Marcus and Riley. Riley froze. The gallery story wasn't enough. We met at a gallery wasn't a moment you knew you were in love. It was a backstory. It wasn't an emotion. Marcus looked at her. For the first time all night, he looked terrified. He didn't know the lines. There was no script for this. The silence on the lawn was heavy. Crickets chirped, oblivious to the social assassination attempt taking place. Marcus took Riley's hand. His palm was damp. "We don't have to," he whispered, low enough that only she could hear. "We can leave." Riley looked at Tori's smug face on the stage. She looked at the guests, waiting for the billionaire to falter, waiting for the crack in the facade. "No," Riley whispered back. "We are getting our money's worth." She squeezed his hand and pulled him toward the stage. They climbed the 3 steps. The light was blinding. Riley took the microphone from a stunned Derek. "Hi, everyone," Riley said. Her voice was steady, trained from years of directing unruly wedding parties. "I'm Riley." She looked at Marcus. He was standing stiffly, his hands in his pockets, looking like he wanted to buy the venue just to burn it down. "Marcus hates telling this story," Riley said into the mic, a playful smile touching her lips, "because it involves him being wrong." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Marcus blinked, surprised. "We didn't meet at a gala," Riley continued, her eyes locking onto Marcus's. She decided to burn the script. She decided to use the truth, her truth, and paint it over him. "I'm a photographer," she said, "and I was shooting a cityscape in New York. It was raining. One of those miserable, gray Tuesday mornings where the whole city feels like it's crying, and I was trying to get a shot of a building, his building." She gestured to Marcus. He was watching her intently now. "And out comes this man," Riley said softly, storming onto the sidewalk. He was on the phone. He was furious. He was commanding the universe to get in line. She took a step closer to him on stage. The crowd faded away. "I took his picture," Riley said. "I shouldn't have. It was invasive, but I couldn't help it because through the lens, I saw something nobody else seemed to see." The crowd was dead silent. Even Tori had stopped smiling. "I saw a man who was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders," Riley said, her voice trembling slightly. "And he looked so lonely. And I thought, I want to know him, not the CEO, not the Titan. I want to know the guy who stands in the rain and worries about everyone else." Riley reached out and took Marcus's hand again. "He caught me taking the photo," she laughed breathlessly. "He came over to yell at me, and he did. He told me I was blocking the pedestrian flow." Marcus let out a small, genuine chuckle. The sound was amplified by the mic. "But then he looked at the photo," Riley said, "and he looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was the only thing in focus." She squeezed his hand. "That was the moment," she whispered, "when he stopped yelling and started seeing me." Riley lowered the mic. For 3 seconds there was silence. Then a woman in the front row dabbed her eyes. "Oh, that is beautiful," someone sighed. Applause broke out. It wasn't polite applause. It was genuine, warm applause. Tori looked like she had swallowed a lemon. Marcus didn't look at the crowd. He was staring at Riley with an expression of absolute, unmasked shock. They walked off the stage. Marcus didn't let go of her hand. He pulled her past the bar, past the tables, and out onto a stone terrace overlooking the darkened vineyards. He released her hand and walked to the stone railing, gripping it hard. "Marcus," Riley asked, her heart racing. "Did I overdo it? Was it too much?" He turned around. His eyes were wild. "Who are you?" he asked roughly. "I'm Riley," she said, "the girl you hired." "That story," Marcus shook his head. "It wasn't. It didn't sound like a lie." "Parts of it were true," Riley admitted, leaning against the wall. "I did see you today when you got out of the car. You looked lonely, Marcus, really lonely." Marcus stared at her. "You improvised a monologue that made 50 strangers cry, purely based on looking at me for 10 seconds. It's my job," she shrugged. "I look at people. I see the story they're trying to hide. Marcus crossed the distance between them in 2 long strides. He stopped inches from her. And what story am I hiding right now? He asked, his voice low, dangerous. Riley looked up at him. The moonlight caught the sharp angles of his face. The tension was gone, replaced by something hotter, heavier. That you don't want to be here, Riley whispered. That you hate this game, and that you're terrified that if you stop moving, you'll feel everything you've been running from for 3 years. Marcus's breath hitched. He reached out. His hand hovered near her face, then his thumb grazed her cheekbone. His skin was rough, warm. You are dangerous, he murmured. I thought I hired a buffer. I think I hired a demolition crew. Riley's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't in the contract. Is that a complaint? She breathed. Marcus's eyes dropped to her lips. He leaned in. The scent of sandalwood and scotch filled her senses. Riley, he whispered. Marcus. The voice cut through the air like a whip. Jamie appeared at the door to the terrace. Oh, Jamie stopped, eyes widening. Interrupting, definitely interrupting. Sorry, but Tori is looking for you, Marcus. She says it's time for the speeches. Marcus pulled back instantly. The mask slammed back into place. The vulnerability vanished, locked away behind the billionaire gaze. Right, Marcus said, straightening his jacket. Speeches. He looked at Riley. The connection was severed. Good job, he said coolly. That was. Worth the money, let's go. He walked past her back toward the party. Riley stood alone on the terrace, touching her cheek where his thumb had been. Her fingers were trembling. Just a job, she reminded herself. Just a job. The next morning the sun was cruel. It was bright, cheerful, and completely at odds with Riley's mood. She was back in uniform. Black slacks, black button-down, utility belt. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. The emerald dress was hanging in the garment bag, a ghost of the night before. She was no longer the girlfriend. She was the photographer. Riley was in the bridal suite at 8 a.m. It smelled of hairspray and nervous energy. Tori was sitting in a chair, surrounded by a swarm of makeup artists. Chin up, the makeup artist commanded. Riley, Tori snapped, not moving her head. Get the details. The shoes are on the ottoman. They are Jimmy Choo custom. Make sure you get the engraving on the sole. On it, Riley said. Her voice was professional, flat. She moved around the room, snapping photos, the dress hanging in the window, the rings, the shoes. She felt invisible again. The power she had felt on stage last night, the way the room had hung on her every word, was gone. So, a bridesmaid whispered loudly to Tori, "What is the deal with Marcus's date?" She gave quite a speech. Riley froze, her back to them, adjusting her lens. "Oh, please," Tori scoffed. "It was so rehearsed. Marcus probably hired a writer. Did you see her dress? It was vintage, which is just code for I can't afford this season." The bridesmaids giggled. "I just needed Marcus to see what he lost," Tori continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial purr. "Bringing some, nobody, just proves how desperate he is. Once this weekend is over, she'll go back to whatever sad little life she came from, and he'll be alone again." Riley felt the sting of tears. She blinked them back furiously. Sad little life. Her studio, her art, her grandmother's memory. It wasn't sad, it was hers. She turned around, raising the camera. "Tori," she said. "Look at the light, smile." Tori smiled. It was predatory. Riley took the photo. Gotcha. 30 minutes later, Riley escaped the suite. She needed air. She needed caffeine. She walked toward the catering tent, her head down, reviewing the shots on her screen. "You look like you're plotting a murder." Riley looked up. Marcus was sitting at a small wrought iron table in the garden, a laptop open in front of him. He was wearing a casual polo shirt and sunglasses. He looked relaxed. No, but less tense than yesterday. "Just plotting an escape," Riley muttered. "Bridal prep is a special circle of hell." "I can imagine." Gus closed his laptop. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." "I'm working, Marcus. I can't just sit," he repeated. He pushed a cardboard cup toward the empty seat. "I brought you coffee, oat milk latte, 2 pumps of vanilla." Riley stared at the cup. "How did you know my order?" I saw it on your cup yesterday when you arrived, Marcus said. I pay attention to details. Isn't that what you told the crowd last night? Riley sat down slowly. She took the coffee. It was hot. It smelled like salvation. Thanks, she said quietly. Tori is being difficult, Marcus asked. Tori is being Tori, Riley took a sip. She thinks I'm a nobody with a sad little life. Marcus's jaw tightened. She said that loud and clear. Marcus leaned forward. He took off his sunglasses. Tori defines worth by net worth, he said. It's why she left me. The day the stock crashed, she looked at me like I was a stranger. She didn't see a partner struggling. She saw an asset deprecating. Riley looked at him. Is that why you hate her, or is it because you still love her? It was a dangerous question. Marcus looked out at the vines. I don't love her, he said. I hate that I let her make me feel small. I hate that for 3 years I've been trying to prove I'm not a failure because of her. He looked back at Riley. Last night, he said, on the stage, you made me sound human, better than human. I just told the truth, Riley said, mostly. You're good at this, Riley, Marcus said softly. Too good, you make it easy to forget it's a transaction. Riley felt that pull again, that magnetic drag toward him. Maybe that's the danger, she said, if we forget who reminds us. The check clearing on Monday, Marcus said, but there was no bite in it. It sounded like a question. Riley stood up abruptly. The coffee cup was empty. I have to go, she said. Groomsmen photos in 10 minutes. Derek wants candid laughing shots, which means I have to tell bad jokes for 20 minutes. Riley, Marcus said. She paused. Save me a dance tonight, he said. A real one. Riley looked at him, at the man who brought her specific coffee order because he noticed. That's extra, she said, trying to joke. Put it on my tab, he replied. Riley walked away. Her heart was beating a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Don't fall for him, Mia had said. Too late, Riley thought. I am in so much trouble. The string quartet began to play. It was Pachelbel's Canon in D. Of course it was. It was the anthem of expensive, predictable weddings everywhere. Riley Santos stood in the shadows of a massive oak tree to the left of the altar. She was in work mode, camera raised, ISO adjusted for the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves. But she was also in date mode. She had swapped her utility belt for the small clutch, shoving extra batteries into the pockets of the emerald dress. She felt like a spy, a double agent in silk. The guests stood. A sea of linen suits and designer florals rose in unison. Tori Ashford appeared at the top of the aisle. She looked breathtaking. Riley couldn't deny it. The dress was a cloud of Chantilly lace, the veil trailing 10 feet behind her like a claim to the land itself. Click, click, click. Riley captured the entrance. Then she swung her lens to the right, to the front row. Marcus, he was standing. His posture was rigid, military-grade straight. He wasn't looking at the bride. He was looking at the groom. Riley zoomed in. The Canon's autofocus locked onto Marcus's face. She expected to see jealousy. She expected to see the bitter ex-lover watching the one that got away. That wasn't what she saw. Through the glass, she saw a man mourning a death. Not of a romance, but of a brotherhood. Derek Chen had been Marcus's best friend since college. They had built Nebula in a garage. They had eaten ramen together, pulled all-nighters, dreamed of conquering the world. And then Derek had taken everything. The girl, the trust, the history. Marcus's eyes were slightly red-rimmed. A single muscle feathered in his jaw. He looked utterly, devastatingly alone in a crowd of 200 people. Riley lowered the camera. She felt like an intruder. This wasn't a moment for the public record. This was a private funeral. She looked across the aisle. Marcus turned his head just an inch. His eyes found hers. It was instant, like a physical tether snapping into place. Across the rows of white folding chairs and weeping relatives, he locked onto her. He didn't smile, he just stared. And for a second the mask dropped completely. Get me out of here, his eyes seemed to say. I am drowning. Riley didn't look away. She nodded. A microscopic movement. I see you. Just breathe. Marcus took a deep breath. His shoulders dropped half an inch. He turned back to the front, the armor back in place. but the tether remained. The ceremony ended with applause and a shower of white rose petals. The happy couple walked back down the aisle, Derek pumping his fist in the air like he had just won the Super Bowl. Riley merged into the crowd, finding Marcus near the exit. He looked exhausted. "You survived," she said softly, appearing at his elbow. Marcus looked down at her, barely. "The vows were poetic," Riley offered. "The vows were plagiarized from a rom-com," Marcus muttered. "I recognized the opening monologue." Riley stifled a laugh. "Be nice." "I am paying you to be nice for me," Marcus said. "I am allowed to be bitter." "Marcus, my man." Derek Chin approached them, flushed with victory and champagne. He had loosened his tie. "Did you see her?" Derek beamed, gesturing back toward the altar. "She's an angel. I am the luckiest man alive." "Congratulations, Derek," Marcus said. His voice was steady but cold. "It was a beautiful ceremony." "Thanks, man. Means a lot that you're here. Seriously, shows real maturity." Derek's eyes slid past Marcus. They landed on Riley. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and sweat. "And Riley," Derek said, his voice dropping to a low purr, "you capture the light beautifully. I saw you working. Very athletic." He looked her up and down. It wasn't a professional look. It was a look that stripped the emerald dress right off her body. Marcus always did have good taste in acquisitions, Derek smirked. "But if things don't work out, you have my card." It was a joke, a crude, tasteless wedding day joke. Riley felt her stomach turn. Before she could speak, the air pressure dropped. Marcus moved. He didn't shove Derek. He didn't yell. He simply stepped between them. He placed his hand on the small of Riley's back, a heavy, claiming weight, and loomed over the groom. Marcus was 3 inches taller than Derek. In that moment, he looked 10 feet tall. "Careful, Derek," Marcus said. His voice was soft, terrifyingly calm. "You just got married. Try to focus on your wife, not mine." "Mine," the word hung in the air. Derek blinked, stepping back. The color drained from his face. He laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Whoa, easy, Tiger, just joking. No need to go corporate raider on me." "Enjoy your reception," Marcus said. "We'll see you inside." He guided Riley away, his hand still burning on her back. He didn't loosen his grip until they were well away from the crowd, standing near a row of cypress trees. Riley looked up at him. His jaw was clenched so hard she thought a tooth might crack. "Mine?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "We skipped a few steps in the relationship timeline." Marcus looked at her. The anger in his eyes was slowly fading, replaced by something darker. "He looked at you like you were something he could just take," Marcus rasped, "like everything else he took." "I can handle Derek," Riley said softly. "I've dealt with handsy groomsmen before." "You shouldn't have to," Marcus said. He reached out, straightening a curl that had fallen onto her forehead. His fingers lingered. "Not while you're with me." Riley's breath hitched. "Even if it's fake." Marcus stared at her lips, "especially because it's fake. The lie has to be convincing, right?" Riley swallowed hard. "Right, convincing." She turned away before she did something stupid, like kiss the client. "Let's go get a drink," she said, her voice shaky. "I think we both need something stronger than sparkling water." The reception tent was a cathedral of white canvas and crystal chandeliers. It was suffocatingly beautiful. Riley and Marcus were seated at table 1, the head table. Tori had put them there on purpose. She wanted Marcus front and center. She wanted him to have a front row seat to her happiness. Riley sat next to Marcus, their chairs touching. Under the tablecloth, her knee brushed against his thigh. He didn't pull away. Dinner was served, some kind of deconstructed scallop that looked like art and tasted like nothing. Speeches began. The best man, a venture capitalist bro named Chad, took the microphone. He was already drunk. To Derek, Chad yelled, raising a glass. "The man who knows what he wants and takes it. We all remember when Nebula was just a sketch on a napkin, and look at you now. You got the company, you got the girl, you proved that nice guys finish last and smart guys finish first." The room cheered. Riley felt Marcus stiffen beside her. He went rigid as stone. his hand resting on his thigh, curled into a fist so tight his knuckles turned white. Nice guys finished last. It was a public slap in the face. A reminder that Marcus had played by the rules and lost everything while Derek had cut corners and won the prize. Riley didn't think. She acted. She reached under the table. She took his fist in her hand. His skin was cold. He flinched at her touch, surprised. She didn't let go. She pried his fingers open, one by one, until his palm was flat against hers. Then she interlaced their fingers, squeezing hard. "I am here," her grip said. "You are not alone at this table." Marcus turned his head slowly. He looked at her. The humiliation in his eyes was raw. Riley squeezed his hand again. She picked up her wine glass with her free hand and raised it to him in a private toast. "To the guy who finishes last," she whispered, because he stopped to help someone up along the way. Marcus's throat bobbed. He squeezed her hand back. Hard. "Thank you," he mouthed. And now the DJ announced, "Let's open the dance floor." The music swelled, a slow, jazzy number. "Dance with me," Marcus said abruptly. "I thought you hated dancing," Riley said. "I hate sitting here listening to Chad rewrite history," Marcus said. He stood up, pulling her with him. They walked onto the dance floor. Marcus placed one hand on her waist, the other holding her hand. He pulled her in, close, chest to chest. Riley had to tilt her head back to look at him. "You know," she said, trying to lighten the mood, "for a robot, your programming is surprisingly fluid." "I took ballroom lessons," Marcus admitted, looking down at her. "My mother insisted. She said a CEO needs to know how to lead." "Your mother sounds formidable." "She was," Marcus smiled faintly. "She would have liked you. She liked people who didn't care about the rules." "I care about rules," Riley argued as he spun her effortlessly. "I just prefer to break the dumb ones." They moved together. It was easy, too easy. The emerald silk swished against his suit legs. The scent of sandalwood enveloped her. For a few minutes the wedding disappeared, Tori disappeared, the debt disappeared. It was just Riley and Marcus spinning in the center of the room. "Riley," Marcus said, his voice low, "about what I said earlier, the check." "Don't," she interrupted. "Don't bring up the money right now, please." "I wasn't going to talk about the money," he said. "I was going to say—" "Marcus," the spell shattered. Tori Ashford appeared next to them. She had changed into a second dress, a slinky silver number. Cutting in, Tori announced. She didn't wait for permission. She practically shoved Riley aside. "For old time's sake." Marcus's hands fell from Riley. He looked at Tori, his face hardening instantly. "Victoria," he said, "I'm dancing with my date." "Oh, Riley doesn't mind," Tori beamed, looking at Riley with cold, dead eyes. "Do you, sweetie? Go get a drink. The bar has a lovely rosé." Riley stood there, frozen. It was a power play. If she made a scene, she looked crazy. If she walked away, she looked submissive. She looked at Marcus. He looked ready to snap. "Go ahead," Riley said coolly. "One dance. I need to check my camera settings anyway." She turned and walked off the floor, her head high, but inside she was burning. She watched from the edge of the room. Tori pressed herself against Marcus. She was whispering in his ear. She was laughing, tossing her head back. Marcus wasn't laughing, he was listening, and then his face changed. It went from annoyed to devastated. All the color drained from his skin. He stopped moving. Tori pulled back, smiling a cruel, satisfied smile. She patted his cheek and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the middle of the dance floor. Marcus stood there for 3 seconds. Then he turned and walked blindly toward the exit. He walked past Riley without even seeing her. Riley watched him go. "Oh, hell no," she whispered. She grabbed her clutch and followed him. The wine cellar was deep underground. It was cool, damp, and smelled of oak barrels and centuries of fermentation. The only light came from dim sconces on the stone walls. Riley found him at the far end of the tasting room. Marcus was leaning against a heavy wooden table. He had found a bottle of whiskey, likely extremely rare and expensive, and had opened it. There was no glass. He took a swig straight from the bottle. "Classy," Riley said, her voice echoing in the stone chamber. Marcus didn't turn around. "Go away, Riley. Clock out. You're done for the night." I don't clock out until the client is satisfied, she said, walking closer, and the client looks like he's about to punch a barrel. I might, Marcus growled. He turned to face her. His tie was undone, hanging loose around his neck. His hair was wild. The calm, collected billionaire was gone. What did she say to you? Riley asked quietly. Marcus laughed. It was a harsh, broken sound. She told me she made a mistake, he said. Riley paused. What? She whispered in my ear, Marcus mocked, lowering his voice. I chose wrong, Marcus. Derek is boring. He's weak. If you wanted me back, I'd leave him tonight. Riley stared at him. She said that on her wedding night. She's a narcissist, Marcus said, taking another drink. She doesn't want Derek. She wants the winner, and right now Nebula stock is up and Derek's company is plateauing, so suddenly I'm attractive again. So Riley took a step closer. You won. Isn't that what you wanted? You wanted to prove you were the prize. You wanted her to regret it. Congratulations, Marcus. She regrets it. Marcus slammed the bottle down on the table. The sound cracked like a gunshot. I don't want to win, he shouted. The echo faded. Marcus slumped against the table, the energy draining out of him. I don't want her back, he whispered. I realized that the moment she touched me, I felt nothing, no spark, no anger, just disgust. He looked up at Riley. His eyes were wet. But it hurts, he confessed. It hurts because I spent 3 years hating myself, thinking I wasn't enough, thinking I failed her, and the whole time, it was just a calculation. I was just a line item on a spreadsheet that didn't balance. I lost myself, Marcus said, his voice breaking. I became this machine, because machines don't get hurt. Machines don't have hearts that can be broken by a quarterly earnings report. Riley felt her own heart breaking for him. She walked up to him. She didn't stop until she was standing between his knees. She reached out and took the bottle from his hand, setting it aside. You're not a machine, Marcus, she said softly. I am, he argued weakly. I'm cold. I'm efficient. Ask anyone. I'm asking you, Riley said. She placed her hands on his face, forcing him to look at her. His skin was rough with stubble. Machines don't buy oat milk lattes because they noticed a detail. Machines don't defend their fake girlfriends from creepy grooms. Machines don't look at a sunset and feel lonely. Marcus closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. He covered her hands with his own. Why are you doing this? He asked. Why do you care? It's just a job. You need the money for your studio. It stopped being about the money, Riley admitted. Somewhere around the second glass of wine and your terrible dancing. She took a breath. This was dangerous ground. I know what it's like, she whispered. To feel like you have to be perfect to survive. My grandmother left me that studio, and every day I feel like I'm failing her. I feel like I'm drowning, but I keep swimming, because if I stop, I lose the only thing that proves I existed. You exist. Marcus opened his eyes. They were dark, intense, and focused entirely on her. I see you, Riley. Do you? She asked. Yes. He moved his hands to her waist. He pulled her in. Her body pressed against his. The heat was instantaneous. I see a woman who is brave, Marcus murmured, his gaze dropping to her mouth, who is talented, who is stubborn as hell, and who is the only person in this entire zip code who hasn't lied to me. Riley's breath caught. Marcus, tell me to stop, he said. His face was inches from hers. She could feel his breath on her lips. Tell me this is a breach of contract. Screw the contract, Ellie whispered. Marcus didn't wait. He crashed his lips onto hers. It wasn't a tentative first kiss. It was an explosion. It was 3 years of repression meeting 3 days of intense longing. It tasted like whiskey and desperation. Riley wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer. He groaned low in his throat, lifting her up so she was sitting on the edge of the heavy table. He moved between her legs, pressing closer, deepening the kiss. His hands were in her hair, messing up the bun, pulling the pins out. Her hands were gripping his shirt, bunching the fabric. It felt real. It felt terrifyingly, undeniably real, and that was the problem. Riley pulled back, gasping for air. Wait, she said. Wait, wait. Marcus froze. He rested his forehead against hers, his breathing ragged. Too fast, he rasped. Too Everything, Riley said. She put her hands on his chest, creating a sliver of space. She looked at him, really looked at him. Marcus, she said, her voice trembling. I can't be your rebound. I can't be the thing you use to prove you're over her. I can't afford to be another transaction. Marcus pulled back, looking hurt. This isn't a transaction, isn't it? Riley asked. We're here on a contract. You're emotional, you're drunk, and tomorrow you go back to the penthouse and I go back to fighting foreclosure. She slid off the table. She smoothed her dress, her hands shaking. I can't do this, she said. Not like this. It has to be real or it has to be nothing, and right now, I don't think you know what's real anymore. Marcus stood there looking at her. He looked devastated again, but this time it wasn't because of Tori. Riley, he said. I'll see you in the morning, she said, backing away toward the stairs. Sleep it off, Marcus, please. She turned and ran up the stairs, leaving him alone in the dark cellar with the ghosts of his past and the lingering taste of whiskey on her lips. Riley returned to the reception tent alone. Her lips still burned. Her hands were still shaking. She slipped into a seat at the back near the catering entrance. She couldn't go back to the head table. She couldn't sit next to Marcus and pretend that what just happened in the cellar was part of a contract. The air in the tent had shifted. It was later now. The older guests had retired, leaving the younger crowd the open bar and a heavy, boozy energy. Marcus reappeared 10 minutes later. He looked composed, his tie retied, his hair smoothed back, but his eyes were scanning the room frantically. When he spotted Riley in the shadows, he started moving toward her. He never made it. A sharp, piercing sound cut through the music. Clink. Clink, clink. Tori Ashford stood on the small stage where the band was playing. She was tapping a silver knife against a champagne flute. She swayed slightly. She had been drinking. And unlike Riley, she wasn't drinking to cope. She was drinking to fuel a fire. Attention, Tori called out into the microphone. Everyone, if I could have your attention for one tiny little moment. The music died. The room went silent. Marcus froze in the middle of the dance floor. He looked at Tori, then at Riley. He knew. I just wanted to make a special toast, where he slurred slightly, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. To honesty. Isn't that what marriage is about? Truth. She laughed. It was a cold sound. And speaking of truth, I think we should all give a round of applause to someone very hardworking tonight. Tori's eyes scanned the room until they locked onto Riley in the back corner. A spotlight followed her gaze, blinding Riley. Riley, Tori chirped. Where are you? Oh, there she is, sitting with the staff, fitting. The room murmured. Riley felt the blood drain from her face. You see, Tori continued, leaning into the mic. Most of you think Riley is Marcus's charming new girlfriend, but she's actually working. Isn't that right, Riley? Tori pulled a piece of paper from her clutch. It was the photography contract. Riley Santos, lead photographer hired by me, gasps, honest, shocked gasps. It is just so sweet, Tori cooed, dripping with venom, that Marcus wanted to support a struggling local artist. I mean, he must have paid a fortune to have the hired help pretend to date him for the weekend, just so he wouldn't look like a sad, lonely loser at his ex's wedding. The silence was absolute. It was heavy and suffocating. Tori dropped the paper. It fluttered to the stage floor. So, let's hear it for Riley. Tori clapped slowly. For doing such a great job, posing. Riley felt like the floor had opened up. Every pair of eyes in the room was on her. She saw pity. She saw disgust. She saw amusement. She was the help. She was the paid date. She was the joke. Marcus was moving. He was shoving people aside, his face twisted in fury, heading for the stage. He looked ready to tear the microphone out of the wall, but Riley stood up. She stood up and her legs were shaking, but her chin was high, because she remembered something. She remembered 40 years of her grandmother standing in the darkroom, developing photos of rich people who never learned her name, and saying, "There is no shame in work, Riley. There is only shame in treating people like they are small." Riley walked out of the shadows. Marcus, stop, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Marcus stopped. He looked at her, agony written all over his face. Riley walked past him. She walked straight to the stage. She climbed the steps. Tori looked at her, smug and victorious. She held out the mic, mocking her. "Do you have something to add, sweetie? Maybe an invoice?" Riley took the microphone. She looked at Tori. Up close, the bride didn't look victorious. She looked mean and small. Riley turned to the crowd. She took a deep breath. "She's right," Riley said. Her voice didn't waver. It boomed through the speakers, clear and strong. "I am the photographer. I was hired to document this wedding, and I need the money." She paused, looking out at the sea of designer suits and diamond earrings. "I need the money because my grandmother left me a studio on Elm Street. It's dusty, and the roof leaks, and it smells like chemicals. But it's my home, and the bank is trying to take it. So yes, when Marcus Cole offered me a job to be his date, I took it." She looked down at Marcus. He was standing at the foot of the stage, looking up at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "I took the money," Riley said, "because I'm not ashamed of surviving. I'm not ashamed of working 3 jobs. I'm not ashamed that I wasn't born with a trust fund." She turned back to Tori. "But here is the part you got wrong, Tori." Riley stepped closer to the bride. "You think this is embarrassing for me. You think revealing that I'm the help makes me less than you. But this weekend, pretending to be with Marcus." Riley's voice softened. She looked back at the crowd, finding Marcus's eyes again. It was the most honest I have felt in years. A hush fell over the room, a different kind of silence, a listening silence. "Because he listened to me," Riley said. "He didn't care about my bank account. He didn't care about my pedigree. He saw me and I saw him." She gestured to Marcus. "I didn't see the billionaire. I didn't see the CEO. I saw a man who was hurt, who was grieving a friendship, and who was brave enough to show up here, stand in the fire, and face his past." Riley felt tears prick her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. Somewhere between the bad dancing and the cheap wine, it stopped being a job. Riley whispered into the mic. "It became real, for me at least." She looked at Tori one last time. "So you can keep your title, Tori. You can keep the money. You can keep the status. I'd rather be the hired help who knows what real connection feels like than the bride who uses her wedding toast to humiliate someone just to feel tall." Riley dropped the microphone. Thud. She didn't wait for applause. She didn't wait for a reaction. She walked down the stairs, but then a sound started. One clap. It was Jamie standing on a chair in the back. Then another. It was the grandmother Riley had charmed. Then another. It was the venture capitalist Marcus knew. Suddenly the room erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar. It was a standing ovation. Tori stood on stage, mouth open, realizing she had just set fire to her own reputation. Riley reached the bottom of the stairs. Marcus was there. He didn't say a word. He reached out and took her hand. He interlaced their fingers, firm, undeniable, and public. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, his eyes locked on hers. "I see you, Riley," he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I see you." He turned to the room, still holding her hand, and glared at anyone who dared to look at them with anything other than respect. Then he pulled her close. "Let's get out of here," he murmured against her hair. "I think we've ruined the party enough." "We definitely voided the contract." Riley laughed, a tear finally escaping. "Best money I ever spent," Marcus said. And together they walked out of the tent, leaving the bride alone on stage in the spotlight she had demanded. The next morning the Napa mist was heavy and cool. The vineyard was quiet, recovering from the hangover of the century. Riley stood by her beat-up sedan in the gravel parking lot. Her trunk was open. She was loading her gear, tripods, light stands, camera bags. She was wearing her combat boots again. The emerald dress was folded carefully in a box in the back seat. She felt lighter. The secret was out. The job was done. Leaving without saying goodbye, Riley turned. Marcus was walking across the gravel. He looked different today. He was wearing jeans, actual denim jeans, and a soft gray t-shirt. He looked younger. He looked like the guy who stood in the rain. I figured you were busy, Riley said, slamming the trunk shut. Damage control, investors. The fallout from the toast heard round the world. The investors loved it, Marcus said, stopping a few feet away. I got 3 emails this morning saying it was the most authentic brand alignment they've seen. Apparently, dating a working-class hero is good for stock prices. Riley laughed. I'm a brand alignment now. Put that on my resume. You're a lot of things, Riley. Marcus reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a white envelope. Your payment, he said, holding it out. Riley took it. She expected a check. She opened it. Inside was a check, but it wasn't for $15,000. It was for $30,000. Riley's eyes widened. Marcus, this is double. I can't take this. Read the rest, he said, nodding at the envelope. Riley pulled out a second piece of paper. It was a business card. Heavy stock. Archer and Associates. Small business law and investment. That's my personal attorney, Marcus said, and my investment manager. I spoke to them this morning. They are expecting your call on Monday to discuss a restructuring plan for your studio. Refinancing the debt, fixing the roof, modernizing the equipment. Riley looked up at him. Marcus, this is too much. I told you I don't want charity. It's not charity, Marcus said firmly. It's an investment. I looked at your portfolio again last night. You have a unique eye. You capture the things people miss. That studio is a landmark. It deserves to survive. Took a step closer. And he added, his voice dropping. I want to be the silent partner, strictly business. Riley looked at the check, then at the card, then at him. Strictly business, she asked, raising an eyebrow. So, silent partner means you never call me. Marcus smiled. It was a slow, dangerous smile. Well, he said, that depends. On what? On whether you accept my second offer. Which is? Marcus took her hand. His thumb brushed over her pulse point. Dinner, he said. Tonight, in the city, no contracts, no cameras, no ex-fiancés. He squeezed her hand. Just me and you in a conversation where I actually look at you for 3 hours straight. Riley felt her heart do a traitorous little flip. 3 hours, she teased. That's a lot of eye contact. You might blink. I won't, Marcus promised. I don't want to miss anything. Riley looked at her car, then back at the vineyard, then at the man standing in front of her wearing jeans and looking at her like she was the only sunrise that mattered. She tucked the envelope into her pocket. Okay, she said, but you're driving. My car makes a weird noise when it goes over 60. Marcus laughed. He pulled her in, wrapping his arms around her waist. Deal, he said. He leaned down. This time there was no hesitation, no audience, no performance. He kissed her, softly, sweetly, a promise in the morning mist. See you tonight, Riley, he whispered against her lips. See you tonight, Marcus. Riley got into her car. She started the engine. It sputtered, then roared to life. As she drove down the long, winding driveway, she looked in the rearview mirror. Marcus was still standing there, watching her go. He didn't look lonely anymore, and for the first time in a long time, neither did she.